Hey guys, it's Istebrak. Today I'm going to be taking a look at all of the diagnostic pieces you guys handed in. Basic front view 14-day challenge format, and it's one of the more popular things you guys sign up for apprenticeship, and it's the more popular assignment because it really does go in and assess exactly what you guys are going through, reveals a lot of the fundamental issues you guys are dealing with on a very personal basis so that you guys really get a catered critique that reflects all of the major issues you have in your work and your skill set, because portraiture is what reveals your general skill level. So if you study portraiture, you study all the ins and outs of it, it makes it very easy to approach all other topics of study, because portraiture has within it all of the fundamentals performed, from contrast, light on form, depth, rotation, perspective, stacking, symmetry, beauty, characterization, the list goes on. So I'm going to be taking a look at all of these and talking about some of the issues you guys are dealing with. Some are very, out there, and they can very easily be remedied. The good thing about fundamental mistakes that are big, let's say for instance, I'm talking about this one. The fundamental mistakes in this one are actually very, very out there. So the face is extremely small. I believe I critiqued this, something similar to this recently. And the head is very big. The issue with this is that this is some kind of misrepresentation and misunderstanding of general human anatomy. So if you fix just that one thing, it kind of, like a ripple effect, affects everything else in the way you see it. But you really have to find those particular fundamentals that change everything once you fix them. And I'm actually very curious with you, particularly if you could please reply to this in the general discussion text channel, what is exactly the history of your portraiture knowledge? Where did you learn it? Where did you study it first? Are you working in 3D modeling at all? What do you reference the most? Because this issue is a pretty big issue, but it's only one issue, meaning that everything else is pretty well rendered. I mean, look at the mouth, look at the nose, look at the eyes. They're good. It's a good face. However, it's that big issue of the head size and the face size. So I really need you to, and then also the kind of androgyny. I'm not really sure if it's androgynous. It is a male. It's reading as a male. But we have to get to the bottom of why you have this issue in your work. So what I'm going to do is just start fragmenting and segmenting things out. I'm going to start factoring things out, taking out one piece at a time and seeing if it pops in your mind. And so, guide us, make sure you reply to today, and make sure that you are, staying, keep the dialogue going after this critique is done. So I'm getting rid of the ears. Did that do anything in your mind? Did that kind of remind you of maybe it's just a general misunderstanding of what ears do, and that kind of widened the way you draw a head? Because in this issue at the moment, what's happening is that maybe the ears are the reason the head is expanding way out of the face. So the face feels small. Then there's the general cheekbone setup as well. The cheekbones are a little bit strong. So the reason why I just don't want to increase the whole face size in here is because it's not just face size, because there are certain areas where the face size actually is fine. It's not that big an issue around the chin. He is a male, so I am I'm reining in some of the features. See that? Like, it's not a huge problem with the face size. It really is and does come from the ears. So as soon as we get rid of those ears, which seem to overlap in front of the head, even though they're on the side of the head, another really big issue here with your anatomy. Once we get rid of those ears, things start to make a little bit more sense. So I'm just curious where you picked up this anatomy for ears, where you learned it. Please engage in dialogue with us here on the discussion group. Let's talk about exactly where you picked up this weird habit with ears. We got to get to the bottom of it. And then I'm gonna fix it like that. So let's just look at what this correction alone has done. So before, it's just, I truly believe it's the ears. So it's very easy to just grab the whole head and the whole face and increase the size, but that doesn't fix the ears, does it? The ears are a really prominent problem at the moment. So when we get rid of them, and I have a feeling you flip either side of the portrait. So actually, let me open up Discord really quickly and find you in the homework submission and see if you actually posted anything. So my 14-day challenge attempt of a man, I have been studying skulls lately, and I was hoping to try to translate what I've learned so far, but reflecting on this, I still have a long way to go. I also need to do separate studies of the eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, and the neck before I tackle another 14-day challenge. I tried to stick with 3 values at first, so I did not confuse myself, but I ended up getting confused later when I tried to soften out areas. I don't think values are your problem at all. Anything, we just need to go back to that little thing where you said you've been studying skulls. So is it possibly that you studied skulls? Because skulls have a very front view. Just trying to find a picture of a skull for us. Have a very prominent cheekbone sticking forward, like that comes out. And that might be an issue. That might be why you're kind of making the ears stick out in front of this side of the head. So it's kind of reminiscent of it. As you can see, you're kind of copying this line right here. So let me tell you something. What we know of what, in order to draw better portraits, you have to reference an actual full face. Drawing skulls, it's just like studying muscle groups and remembering all their medical names. It's a great thing to show off, but it actually does not change your skill at all. Memorizing muscle groups is a great token to add to your list of, grouping of knowledge, but it does not change the fact that you know what to put where. It doesn't, you can understand a muscle group very topically and pull off the same level of anatomy. An artist who can do that can do the exact same thing as an artist who memorized all those muscle groups individually. So it doesn't make you any more skilled. So the same thing goes for skulls. We are hiding 90% of that skull most of the time with fat and skin, and it only sticks out really on the bridge of the nose, the chin, the cheekbones, just juts out just barely, but everything else is padded with organic material. So I would not say that the skull has been helping you. So that might be the reason why the face is too small. So the reason why you might not have had any improvement between now and the last time you got critiqued and everyone telling you the face feels too small is because it's very easy to diagnose it and say the face is too small. And then, you're trying to fix it. But the real issue, which is your excessive studying of skulls, and any level of studying of skulls that lasts more than just looking at a skull while you're painting a full face, is excessive in my opinion. Skulls don't need to be studied unless you're painting a skull, a full-on skull. So please take that, take that pretty seriously, because what's happening right now is this severe disproportion that's non-human. It's like you're studying non-human anatomy. And we have to get rid of that and then place the ears where they go appropriate to the head size. So ears go between the nose and the eye line. They tuck right in. Just it shouldn't take too much effort to throw in the anatomy of the ears. And they should feel like they're behind the face, behind the outline of the head. The ears do not move forward and sit in front of that line. This line here is an edge. It does not work like that. The cheekbones jut out further than the ears can. If you feel like you want to render ears a little bit more realistically, you can just throw in some really topical anatomy here and there. The point is, this is where we need to focus all of our attention. After all that has been fixed, what we need to do now is just take care of your contrast. So your contrast is very weak, it's very safe. And I appreciate when students take their time with their contrast and try not to overdo it. But you're at the point where you are evolving into the dark spots. You are now expected to have black nostrils, black eye indicators of pigmentation or creasing in the eyes, and the black marks or the black corners of the mouth. So in order to have contrast as black, you have to also move in tandem and bring it in as white as well. So if blacks go down, whites go up in the I should probably not say that in this climate, in this racial climate in the United States. But please understand I'm talking about values. If the values of black start to get introduced into the portrait, the white also has to start getting introduced. You can't just have one half of contrast. It doesn't work like that. So then I'm lightening the background and I'm selecting inverse. And now in order to get started, I'm not going to just bring levels and do something like this where it's a sweeping level drop. No, I'm not trying to do that because I don't want to mess with the grays. The grays need to be left intact. The grays are data. Write that back to me in the discussion group. The grays are data. The mid-tones are information. We need to maintain the gray. So it's the best where all the good stuff happens. All the value changes, all the anatomy, all the flesh, all of the detail, all of that fun stuff happens. It's illusory. It doesn't really happen in the highlights, even though the highlights are what attract you guys the most and what makes you say, wow, that looks amazing. So if you turned everything off except for the black, what would happen is you would actually see a very just couple little speckles here and there, as you can see me adding very small brush work. But it's again, it's still required. It's still a necessity for completing realism, because you can't have this world exist. This world doesn't exist without ambient occlusion. And then there's the extreme ambient occlusion where light just simply cannot reach, and that's the necessary level of contrast. So I'm just taking care of that. And I'm adding a little bit of a shadow on the underside of the nostrils. And I'm adding the deepest point, which is the blackest point here on the mouth, and bringing in that necessary contrast. So if you're at the point where you're like, I have no idea how to bring in contrast, if that's what you're feeling, that's because it's just kind of the stage you need to move toward. So you've been actually delaying this. You've been too friendly with this whole thing. You've been taking your time and you're kind of avoiding the black and sticking to the grays too long, in the hopes that, you know, you never have to deal with this contrast and you can stay in this safe zone. But you got to keep moving forward. You can't stay in the same spot too long, or else nothing happens in life. And then finally, you've got extreme value sharing, which is something that should be taken care of. By the time you're rendering lips like this, value sharing should be just completed with. It should be done in your journey. And make sure you take care of that. Even though it's a masculine character, I would recommend you blend this area of the nose out. You really don't need these extreme jutting edges. They're kind of cheap ways to make a character look masculine. He still has to look human. He still has to look believable. Because he's Asian, I'm just going to go for the darker eye for that realism, just so we can complete the anatomy. Kind of that excessively used, really bright eye actually just decreases anatomy because it works from over characterization. Kind of, they're just more fantasy eyes, which you don't want to employ all the time. Every time you draw a character, they've got like super light white or light gray eyes. And then we need a little bit of a crease up here, which I would recommend you venture into with radial shading soon. But as soon as you kind of get a good handle over your contrast, and then I'm just going to start bringing in the white everywhere on the face that it's required. So Asian nose bridges are actually pretty mild. They don't really stick out that far. So they're kind of low to the face, so I'm not going to put too much light. Asian cheekbones, however, are very prominent, and we want to make sure we're representing that. Your general sphere is actually lacking. The top part of the head should not have values similar to the lower part of the head. You've completely thrown off your values at this point, so make sure you're not doing that again. And then I'm going to just hood the eyes just a little bit more with some shadow. Good job on the Asian eyebrows. That actually looks pretty similar to how Asian eyebrows are. They're pretty flat and square. A little bit of shadow on the nose, and then a little bit of extra shadow. See how I'm zoomed out? This helps me see exactly what's happening with the values. and a little bit of shadow on the upper lip. And I'm just going to blend out this area here. Asian cheekbones and jawline are actually pretty prominent as well. And then you need one more major contrast line, which is the shadow of the jawline of the chin on the neck. You really need to make sure that is intact. And I'm just going to delete everything above that point. And then just tapering off the shadow on either side. So I added my contrast and adjusted it in a separate layer. The neckline, I feel, is a little bit strong still. It doesn't really need to be that prominent. It doesn't need to look like he's on steroids in order to feel realistic. So you could give him a little bit more slender and neckline. Plus, Asian body types are usually on the slender side, so it really does not make sense and does not read if you do it like that. So I'm just trying to see what I can do. It's a little too thin. I still have to follow that extremely strong bone structure you have everywhere else, but I do not want those thick necklines there. And then I'm going to finish off by making the neck feel a little bit more realistic, meaning that I'm not trying to draw the trapezius muscles. I'm just drawing the cylinder of the neck and only that. That way we're not trying to draw muscles or trying to draw sweeping representation of muscles. I'm pushing in the jawline just a little bit. They're still prominent. They're just not superhero comic book prominent anymore, or super villain prominent, if you see what I mean. They're kind of just a little bit too evil magician. And I'm just tucking them in just like that. So before, I'm not even sure if you were going for an Asian male. Did you mention Asian male or just male? Of a man. Yeah, I just assumed it was an Asian male just because it was a hooded eye. I could be wrong. So before, after, and then this is just one step closer to better contrast. You could have more contrast in the portrait just as much as this. So a lot of stuff went into a lot of the mistakes. That's why I started with the one with the most issues, just because it'll really create a nice base for us to look at all the other pieces. So one major issue, which was not knowing really what you're doing with ears, just you're out floating in space when it comes to ears. So yeah, make sure that you understand that, and that just one tiny issue affected everything else. Even if you're not going for Asian male, you still have to fix those ears. In this case, it's too much face and not enough head space. So let me just lasso this. So you see how difficult it is for me to lasso, or how difficult it is for me to use the magic wand. This is because of really, really low contrast all around. And the way to fix it is to make sure that as much as the background is bright, the character is dark. We don't need characters that glow. Nobody glows that you draw, and if they glow, you'll know what to do at that time. You just treat them like a light source. So right now what's happening in your 14-day challenge is it's representing your immaturity with contrast as much as the previous artist had. And you need to start thinking about, what color is my background? Because there's a holy trinity that happens when it comes to art: the light source, the background, and the object. They need to be harmonious. It's called the light environment. So if your light source is bright and it's revealing highlights around her nose, cheeks, and eyes, if we can see her, it means there's light, and that light will illuminate the background. It doesn't mean she's going to start reflecting light. She's not made of a mirror. She's not made of mirror glass. She's still a human being made of matter. She's still opaque. Light doesn't just shoot right through her. She's not see-through, so there's no reason why she can't be a little bit darker. All right. And these are the major fixes I feel that are really affecting your piece. So there was too much face and there wasn't enough contrast. So we fixed all of that. and I'm just cleaning up here. And then I'm gonna just clean up this part as well. Now, your character looks like she's looking down. What we want to do is make it so that she's looking up and forward. So I'm going to take a look at your notes really quickly. And the way to do that is to just make sure you don't have tons of upper eyelid space. And I don't want her to look like she's looking directly up, just at me, just at the viewer. Make sure the portraits you draw, half of the skill, half of the mastery comes from a viewer being able to look at a photo, look at a portrait painting and feel like they're looking, not at a photo because of its realism, but at a photo because of its character, its life, you know, the life in the image. So to add life is to make a character look like they're looking at something, actually looking at something and thinking about it. So make sure that your characters are engaging with the viewer. They actually look like they're looking up. So take a look at the before. Looking down, that's because of the upper eyelid space. Looking up, we pushed it up and toward. So what did this artist say? Here's my submission. This was fun to do, though I'm pretty rusty. I've been sick for a few months, so I'm sorry to hear that. Also, I never get the eyes to be as dimensional as I'd like, so hopefully I just covered that. Anyways, here's a submission. Submissions look great. Yes, they do. It was a really nice batch of you know, a variety of fundamental mistakes, but also a variety of skill. Like, this face is beautiful. It's just those small little issues here and there that, because, you know, you might not have painted faces for a long time, you kind of fell off the familiarity of anatomy to know when you're looking at, you know, wrong anatomy. So maybe you just didn't even notice that there was an issue with the face size, but now you do. So I'm just adding a little bit of contrast around the crease, and as you know, my trick is add paint and delete later. Always use a new layer for maintaining your edges. Everything goes when it comes to keeping your edges alive. All right, so you see that? And so this will help us create contrast around that eye socket line, which is her, you know, what it is that makes her face. So every face has a feature to it that just makes it. Make sure that you always try to put those features in priority. Try to make those work, because right now her eyes and her lash line are gorgeous. I love the way they drape and kind of curtain over the rest of the face. I'm going to exaggerate the shadow of the nose, and I'm going to push the contrast up the mouth and add the Cupid's bow bump. You can't have a Cupid's bow bump up here without having it down there. And then I'm going to add the shadow of the lower lip, which you guys forget all the time. And if you are still having issues, and you guys both, the previous artist and yourself, both have this issue with over-representing the bone structure of the nose. Basically, you guys forgot to blend out the geometry, the geometric anatomy there, which is not a good idea. Always make sure you're blending those out. So I'm going to get the magic wand tool, and I'm going to raise the brightness on the upper half, bring in white, add light to the cheekbones, and add a little bit more light here, and then making sure that I have shadow around the lower half of the portrait. All right, so let's take a look at the before. Before, very little contrast, too little. It really needs to be addressed. And then after, a darker face, which makes more sense, to the skin type, and then there is the lighter background. If you want to push the white of the whitest whites, I'm not sure if I can give you that license yet, just because you've used so much white here thus far. But this is where you are allowed to have it. You're allowed to have it on the specular highlights. That's too big. Big specular highlights are cheesy. Always go for the smaller ones. They give you more detail and more spark to the portrait. And you can just place them anywhere you want, really. And then there is the nose tip. There is a little bit more glistening on the cheekbone. And then there is the light on the upper part of the Cupid's bow. And then there's the light of the lip down here. Okay, moving forward. For the next piece, come on. What happens is, again, it's another example of just too much face. So all I really have to do for this piece is just add volume down here. So you've literally drawn on a white, I mean on a circular, like just on a sphere. That's all you've really done, and then you've used way too much white up here. So yes, the geometric anatomy of a sphere helps us find out what we're doing with everything. Yes, it helps in a lot of ways, but it's the face, a human face is not just a sphere. And so what you need to really do is start building appropriate amounts of volume for this face to exist in. Humans aren't spheres, even if spheres help us draw humans. So I did that. And yes, it looks a little bit too much. But the reason why is because we need to start adjusting this face around this oval and then add the jawline. So what I'm going to do is just reduce the amount of the face, put the eyes in between or at the line of the ears, bring the nose down a little bit, the nose and the mouth down here. Sorry, my mouse is giving me trouble. And then start adding the jawline now. And the jawline is just the chin, because now we can't really add that chin until we know where that mouth is going to be. So I'm going to tuck in the sides of the head. Tuck in the sides of the chin. Oh, there it is. We discovered the jawline. All right. And then going to reduce the amount of circle everywhere else. And then in a second, I'm going to bring the mouth a little bit lower. You need to pull the septum down. The nose isn't an actual flat thing. You need to pull that septum down. Eyebrows look good. There's a bit of an expression. I'm not a fan of it. For 14-day challenges or any kind of diagnostic pieces, make sure you don't do expressions because it isn't really about the expression when it comes to this anatomy. And then make the head a bit more square. Tucking all this in to make sure we have that rounded oval shape to the head. Okay, and then in this case, actually the neck was too slender. All right, and I'm going to pull the corners of the eyes down, and that's really going to add that beauty. And then I need to show you the reason why it looked like too much face is because the eyebrows were existing way past the point where eyebrows can exist on a face. Which is they don't enter this temple zone. They stop before it unless somebody actually drew their eyebrows around their temple. The temple is the space on the side of your head beside the eyebrows. That is its own space. Do not share it. And then I'm going to blend out a little bit here. Blend the rest out. So you've got a lot of work to do in learning anatomy after the sphere. So sphere is just step one. We have a sphere, a circle, and then we add to that sphere. You skipped adding and drew the face right on the sphere. That's wrong. That's not human. That's emoji. Don't do that again. And then I'm going to blend the sides out wherever I added a little bit of lasso work, and I'm just smudging away. And then now I'm going to do the thing where I make it look a little bit more realistic as a sphere. And again, see, every time you have issues selecting your object with magic wand and getting the lasso through, it means you have a contrast problem between the background and the object. So the object I'm going to darken just a touch, and the background I'm going to lighten a bit more. That way the object looks more three-dimensional. The background is an active player in this object's three-dimension and realism. I'm going to reduce the amount of shadow on the sides of the head, because if the light was coming from above, the sides of the head would not be dark. I'm going to add shadow in between the eyes, because in the anatomy of a human face, that part is indented. And then I'm going to add light to the cheekbones because they catch some light. They stick out like little mountains or little hills. I'm going to make sure we add a shadow to the lower eyelids because they are part of the recess. They move inward. And then I'm going to add light to the sides of the nose so that we're not value sharing. Adding a little bit of extra shadow in between the eyebrows and some light on the nose bridge. You can also add a little bump for the nose, and then make sure the nostrils are not as bright as the nose tip. The nose tip is the brightest. And then we're going to have the chin catching some light, just like that. And then we're going to add a bit more blending around the cheeks. And that should help a little bit as well. I'm just trying to find any last minute issues. I'm going to blend out the eyebrows a touch more. And using soft brush for all of this. Soft brush is a bit dangerous. Make sure you don't use it as abundantly as I do. I'm using it because I'm correcting. It's easier for me to apply paint this way and do fast work, but you guys should use your blocking brushes. All right, let me see if this was all fine before I went a bit overboard. All right, I'm just gonna stop there. Okay, so before, after, before, after. This before is not acceptable. You drew a beautiful eye. What happened to the rest of her face? Where did it go? You cannot use a sphere. You cannot use a circle to represent human face anatomy. It doesn't work. It's an oval. It's an elongated circle. It's a long sphere. All right, for this one, it's actually really great. The face to head size ratio. You can see how you guys have regular issues with that, and this actually looks pretty fine. He does look a little bit like a short person, kind of a little bit stunted, a little bit small, just because it looks like a hobbit. Just because of the amount of age you've added to the eyes, but the way that the head almost looks like a young child or a toddler. But take a look. This is the worst one by far. Take a look at how difficult it is for me to select the head in this light environment. I've had to use like really, really low, which is going to make it a kind of a messy lasso. So I'm just really bad contrast against the background. You think it's harmless until it starts affecting the way you choose your values, and at that point it's no longer harmless. Anything that's detrimental to you choosing more accurate values is not harmless. So you must pick the right background value. I'm going to raise that background value, yes, all the way up, because the value of the face is fine. And then what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to just elongate the head a little bit for that age that you've represented here for this character. So the nose gets a little bit longer, and it's very feminine in one big way. A feminine face is when the mouth is close to the nose or too close to the nose. You want to add masculinity, you expand the distance between the nose and the mouth a little bit more than usual. And then what we do next is lower the jawline to be further away from the mouth. So it's not just a total stretching of the head, it's a very finite points of expansion. So the nose and the mouth, the nose being extended on its own, the mouth being distanced from the nose, and then the entire jawline being distanced from the from the whole face and from the mouth. So it's not, this result would not have been the same had we kept the nose-mouth distance the same. So you can't just stretch the face to make it look more masculine. You have to actually create distances between certain features to make them look masculine. And another reason why this face looks a little more on the feminine side is that the eyebrows, I'm not even sure if this is supposed to be feminine. Let me look at the review, the submission notes. Okay, so it's been a long since I'm doing. So you guys don't really mention it, what it is exactly, but I'm just gonna assume it's a male, and you have to just get rid of the eyebrow arc, which is signature female beauty. Yes, we've seen this in real life. Yes, there are people with men with eyebrow arcs that are very prominent, but it's a very feminizing, very beautifying thing. You just have to look at drag makeup. One of the most important staple parts or the template of drag makeup is the eyebrow arc, really hyper exaggerated feature. And then there is just the jawline, which you can increase in size, the neckline, which you can increase in size. If you didn't mean for a male, then you have to sort of look at the eye levels. So your eye levels are actually very masculine, they're very level. To have a female character, you kind of have to drag those down and reduce the amount of shadow in the eyes. So the amount of shadow in the eyes as well as the nose are what made it read as male. But I recommend doing male and female 14-day challenges because it'll reveal which is which and how to avoid what to take where and put it there. But take those eyebrows, give it to the female, take the female's features, give it to the male that's on the mask, that's on the male. So I'll give it to the female that's on the male. So it's good to do those side by side basically, because then you'll know what you're using and when you're using it wrong. So flatten. Great work, everyone. And then finally this one, which is a combination of everything. It's actually really crazy how similar a lot of your fundamental mistakes are, but some are a little bit more, again, out there, like the first one we saw. This one is kind of out there because you've drawn, so based off what you've seen so far in today's critique, you know that masculine heads have a very wide neck. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at a very, very wide neck. Nothing's wrong with that, but it's very wrong when you combine it with extremely, almost baby eyes, infantile head size, very, very circular head. That's when that starts to not look great. Do not add gradients to the background. It's a 14-day challenge. It's not an art class or art school abstract submission. Just keep it clean. A simple gray background will help you understand your values a lot better. So for this character, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So I'm going to separate those two. And then I'm going to start correcting. So for the head size, it's really hard to pick which direction to go in, like keep the masculine or keep the baby face. I'm going to just go for very mild, gentle female features. I'm not going to go for either masculine or baby because they're so opposite to each other on the spectrum, and you combine both on a portrait, and that's where all of your issues came from. So I'm just going to go for general female, kind of more delicate features, more gentle features, nothing extreme or anything like that. So the eyebrows look surprised, and that's because the inside of the eyebrow is elevated. The size of the eyes are very large. They do not need to be that large, so I'm going to increase density and use the mouse here to increase density and shrink the eyes uniformly. And then the size of the nose for female features that are more delicate is to keep them within the lines of the eyes. I'm going to push in the shape of the eye, the inside shape of the eye, so it's not a perfect seed shape. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to give the nostrils a bit more volume, bringing the septum down, nostrils higher than the septum. I'm going to the lips kind of on a level line. You have almost no dimension to the lips at all. They're just kind of like generally hazily rendered. I'm going to tuck in the sides of the, so there's no cylinder to the lips of the head, and then I'm going to try maybe with Transform later when I'm done with Liquify to elongate the face a little bit. So before, after, thick neck, does not match with massive baby eyes. Nose had 0 dimension. The lips were oddly shaped. Upper lip was too large, no dimension, almost looked swollen. I decreased the size of the upper lip a little bit. Now that I'm back here, I could probably afford to lower that a little. Okay, and then for the lips, I'm not going to focus on particular features for you. I just want you to get to this point. So I'm not worried about you not rendering a realistic lip just now. And all right, so I'm just elongating the face. Elongating the face is just so that it doesn't look like an infant anymore. We're still nowhere near male elongation, so it doesn't really, it's not really affecting the face too much. And then I'm getting rid of the shadow you have on the jawline. I'm not sure why you let the shadow travel that high. It doesn't need to be. It's the object in front of the other object, and the shadow is in between them. So object, shadow, object. The shadow comes after the face is in front of the neck, causing the shadow of the face on the neck, with the light being in front of everything. I'm going to blend out the eyebrow. You pretty much just drew caterpillars here. There's no dimension, there's no shape to the eyebrows. Eyebrows are thicker at the start and turn into tails, kind of like really thin tails at the end. You didn't do enough of that. They're too similar. And I'm going to overblend. I'm going to just make sure that there's not too much shadow there. And then I'm going to overblend, generally overblend, not completely erase, the inside of the inner eyebrow. And then I'm going to blend the nose bridge. So this is already a lot of steps ahead of where you were. And I just want to get you to this point. I'm not going to keep pushing it, because then it's just outside of your current stage or your current phase or your current skill level. Let's just see you do this first, these big corrections, because it's not one fundamental error, it's a lot. You have age being confused, and you have gender confused. We need to make sure you have both. As a general rendering skill, though, you'd actually painted the eyes pretty okay. You have a cast shadow from the eyelashes. You have a water line. You have a good eye shape. You even have a great crease. So it shows that you've actually been putting in a lot of work for your eyes. You've been putting in work, and that's good. I feel like these eyes are a bit too large, so you did notice that, and there's something wrong with the valleys, but I've already redone the whole thing 3 times. I can't figure out how to fix it. So today, I hope today showed you exactly where most of your issues are. The eyes are too big, the head was too short and circular. I've seen that, you know, a couple of times today. The shadow I showed you that needs to be separated. The neck shadow doesn't leak into the jawline. The jawline stays a consistent value. You need to study some noses and mouths. You need to start raising your mileage of noses and mouths to catch up to what you're doing with the eyes. And then make sure the eye size, see how the eye size is a little bit more pinched on the insides? That's because the inner corners stop it from looking completely seed shaped. Your eyes here are too symbolic. They look like a basic symbol or a sign of an eye rather than realistic eyes. That's because you have to cut off the ends of the seeds. All right, thank you everyone for submitting work. You guys are the best. I will see you next month, and I hope you guys have fun with the upcoming assignment. And I really love Halloween time. I love assigning spooky stuff. Book cover assignments are my favorite because it's all about storytelling. It's all about narratives, and I can't wait to see what you guys do. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.